3. Spine-chilling true trucker tales, sinister secrets revealed in haunted highways. Mike had heard the stories before, but tonight they felt different. The diner was buzzing, fellow truckers swapping tales over mugs of bitter coffee. Laughter mingled with the heavy scent of grease and sweat. But there was an undercurrent of tension, an air of something sinister creeping around the edges. "You ever been down Route 47 after dark?" Larry asked, his eyes wide with a hint of fear. "Don't stop for anyone," Barry chimed in. "I heard a fella picked up a hitchhiker, a ghost, they say, led him right into a wreck." A chill slithered down Mike's spine at the thought. He was just trying to get home after a grueling week on the road, longing for the warmth of his wife and kids. But those stories stayed with him, each more haunting than the last. A gas station attendant with eyes that bore into your soul. The chilling disappearance of Jake, his old friend. "Truck found abandoned just a mile from here, engine still warm," whispered one of the men, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Mike clenched his jaw, nodding along, but feeling unease prickling at his skin. As he hit the road later that night, the rain came down in sheets, blurring the world outside his windshield into shades of darkness. Each bend in the road felt like a twist of fate, a reminder of that shadowy figure that loomed in the back of his mind. Was he truly alone? The familiar lull of the highway, mixed with the rhythmic drum of rain, became a cruel serenade, lulling him into a trance that masked his fraying nerves. Then, through the misty blur, he saw it. The flickering lights of a gas station peeking out from the trees. Relief washed over him, but as he pulled in, that relief quickly turned sour. The moment he stepped inside, something felt off. The attendant, an older man with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, seemed to know more than he should. "You drive safe out there, especially through the back roads," the man said, his voice longing to linger. Mike nodded, growing more uneasy by the second. He hopped into his truck, heart thudding louder than the rain against the roof. As he merged back onto the asphalt, headlights danced like phantoms among the trees. The darkness began to close in around him, and Mike felt it, a nagging feeling that something was right behind him. His grip tightened on the steering wheel, the rubber closer to tearing. Then he glanced in the rearview mirror. His blood ran cold. There it was, fleeting and pale. A face he recognized. Jake. It can't be, Mike thought, panic surging through him like ice. But the whispers from the diner returned, echoing in his ears. Frantically, he pressed down on the gas, racing through the midnight gloom, desperately searching for an escape. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Mike's heart raced as he cut a hard left, desperately wanting to lose the phantom in the rear view. But the reality set in. The road was swallowing him, each mile erasing the safety of familiarity, turning his hometown into a twisted nightmare. Was Jake warning him? Was he cursed to walk these roads too? As Mike sped forward, the road ahead twisted into the suffocating shadows, darkness swallowing the headlights. It became clear, whatever followed him wasn't merely a ghost, it was a harbinger of something darker. The road beneath him began to tremble as he faced not just the terror of the unknown, but the creeping realization that he was racing toward a fate worse than he could imagine.
Where would it lead him? And would he be able to escape what awaited in that suffocating blackness? The wheels screeched against the asphalt as Mike pressed harder on the gas, his eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror. Jake's face flickered, a shadow trapped in the glass, whispering secrets of horror. His heart raced, pounding against his ribs like a caged animal wanting out. Lights from his dashboard flickered, and in that moment he knew something was wrong with the engine. A deep rumble came from below, as if the truck itself was reluctant to obey. Panicking, Mike turned off the radio, the static from the speakers only amplifying his dread. He was alone out there, surrounded by dark trees that loomed like silent sentinels, watching. He needed to make it to the next town, the sanctuary where the threat could simply fade into the distance. Out of instinct, he took a sharp right off the main road, aiming for an old logging path. This road was less traveled, but it promised a chance to lose whatever was pursuing him. Each bump jarred his spine, but adrenaline drowned out the pain. The forest around him felt alive, the shadows stretching, whispering as if they were aware of his fear. Suddenly, the truck jolted violently. The engine sputtered and then went silent. The headlights flickered once, twice, then died, plunging him into total darkness. Panic flared as he slammed his fist against the steering wheel. "No, no!" The words escaped his lips in desperate gasps. It was a night full of nightmares, swallowed by an ominous hush. Mike fumbled for his phone, praying for a glimmer of light, but the screen remained black. A wave of isolation crashed over him, the weight of the night heavy against his chest. Radio clicked back to life, static crackling through the speakers. "Help!" came a distant voice, a plea soaked in despair, breaking the silence. Mike's breath hitched. It sounded like Jake. "Jake!" he shouted into the void, but the voice faded as swiftly as it had come, leaving only the deafening sound of his own heartbeat. A fog began to roll in, thick and clinging, wrapping around the truck like phantom fingers. He tried to start the engine again, but it was pointless. The night sat heavily around him, suffocating, a predator waiting in the shadows. Mike's pulse quickened as he felt a presence at the edge of the woods, beyond the trees, just out of sight. Something was watching him. Voices murmured in the stillness, rising from the depths of the forest, warnings lost to the murmuring wind, warnings he couldn't understand, yet instinctively knew to fear. With an intense jolt of desperation, he cracked open the door, cold air invading the cab like an icy hand. "What are you doing, Mike?" he scolded himself, his breath making little clouds around his face. But a compulsion drew him to the edge of the dark woods. He stepped out, and the chill gnawed at him. Footsteps echoed, soft yet pronounced, crunching against the fallen leaves. They were not his. Mike felt as though ice invaded his veins. He whipped his head around, searching for the source of the sound, but all he saw were shadows twisting between trees. Terrified, he turned to sprint back to his truck when he stumbled across something solid, a newspaper, a photo, face etched in haunting familiarity. Jake! His heart sank. The headline read, "Local trucker disappears on Route 47. A cold dread filled him, the truth crashing over like a breaking wave. This was more than just a ghost story. He was part of it now, and worse, he couldn't tell if he was meant to be the next headline or the one haunting the road forever. As the footsteps drew closer, he felt that unspeakable fear thickening the air. He bolted back to the truck, the feeling of being pulled into the darkness growing stronger. What was waiting for him inside? His breath hitched in his throat, dread drumming louder than ever. And just then, the headlights flickered back to life. "Get in," a whisper hissed from behind him, deep and chilling as night itself. The invitation was sinister, and he hesitated. What was truly inside the truck, and who was below the trees? Was this his last chance to escape, or the beginning of something much worse? Mike's heart raced like mad, teetering on the edge of fight or flight. The headlights illuminated the immediate space around him, offering a brief respite from the shadows. But what lurked beyond those beams felt so much darker, so much more alive. He strained his ears, holding his breath, hoping to hear anything amidst the heavy silence. Get in. The voice was closer now, a mere whisper wrapped in an unsettling familiarity. It danced around his ears, inviting, yet full of malice. What kind of creature could mimic the voices of lost souls? He turned, his pulse pounding painfully in his throat. The shadows between the trees flickered, shifting unnaturally. Sweat dripped down his back, the cold scratching across his skin like hungry fingers. He didn't want to look. He didn't want to acknowledge that whatever was in those woods had a claim on him. But he couldn't help it. He squinted into the darkness, feeling it pulling him closer. "Come closer, Mike. We're waiting for you." That haunting voice snickered, almost echoing around him, a taunt that filled the air with dread. He shook his head, denying the magnetic pull of the forest. "No!" he shouted, grounding himself against the truck, willing his legs to move. But it felt like the earth had roots, clutching him to the spot. Every instinct screamed at him to run, yet his feet stayed glued to the gravel. Somewhere deep in the darkness, a rustling sound broke the hush, jagged and chilling. A pair of glowing eyes split the blackness, locking onto him. Fear rooted him. They blinked slowly, almost teasingly, as if savoring his terror. Then, in a moment of clarity, Mike's instincts kicked in. He dashed towards the truck. Adrenaline was his only ally as he slammed the door shut, locking out whatever nightmarish entity was lurking outside. The engine sputtered, mirroring his frantic thoughts, but it roared to life. With one swift turn of the key, he knew he had to get out of that forest. As he began to accelerate, pain shot through his body, a quick flash of fire up his arm. He glanced down, his veins prickling as he saw a bloody handprint smeared against the passenger door's window, fingers reaching out like a desperate plea. It was warm. It felt alive. He could feel the presence behind him shifting again, the voices crescendoing into an incomprehensible chant. He threw the truck into gear, wheels crunching against gravel as he sped down the logging path, the branches snapping like fingers trying to capture him. But it didn't matter. The engine roared defiantly against the chaos. He was escaping. He had to be. But as he veered back onto the main road, he glanced in the rearview mirror. The forest seemed to open up behind him, a yawning abyss full of waiting faces, twisted, grotesque, all watching him slip away. They were not done. They whispered his name, and this time it was welcoming. "Mike, come back." He hit the gas harder, but the whispers clawed at him, an echo of promises left unfulfilled, of people he had lost. Each voice pulled at him, guilt layered with dread, threatening to drag him back into the woods where countless souls wandered, trapped in the trap of their regrets. He had to make it to the town, but dread curled around his heart like a vice. The truck rattled violently, lights flickered again, the dashboard flashing like a warning. Could he really leave it all behind? And suddenly, out in front of him, headlights flashed. An approaching vehicle? Hope flickered in his chest, battling against the dark anticipation clinging to his soul. But then the lights shifted, morphing into a skeletal figure rocking absurdly back and forth. Eyes hollow, grinning widely. It reached out, its hands stretching towards him. All the while, the whispers burgeoned into a cacophony, drowning thoughts of safety. "Welcome home, Mike!" What waited for him in town? Could he trust the flickering lights, or was it a trap? As fear spiked, Mike braced for impact, while his mind screamed for help.
Just how many were lost out here? He gripped the steering wheel tighter, desperate to break free, but the path ahead twisted ominously. Adventure or nightmare? His heart pounding, he knew one thing for sure: the night was far from over. The truck barreled down the road, flashlight beams flickering across old signs and twisted trees. It felt like the very asphalt was alive, shifting nauseatingly beneath him. A cold sweat washed over Mike as he fought to control his breathing, glancing back in the rearview mirror. The skeletal figure had vanished, but the whispers clung to him like a miasma, wrapping around him tighter with every second. His mind raced. What were those voices from the woods? Friends? Family? A pitiful part of him wanted to believe they were coming to help, to guide him home. Yet he felt their sinister edges curling like thorns around his heart. Tightly gripping the steering wheel, he scolded himself. No one could help him now. He had to make it to town, reach safety before the night could consume him completely. But the road stretched forward, an endless ribbon of darkness. Every shadow loomed larger than life, and with every passing second the air thickened with the weight of so many lost souls. He could almost hear their cries, begging him to remember, to come back. Suddenly, headlights snapped on in the distance, slicing through the inky blackness like a beacon. Relief surged, but it was quickly tinted with suspicion. Could he really trust it? Pushing the doubts aside, he pressed on, desperate to reach the light. As he got closer, towering figures emerged from the shadows. They hovered at the edge of the road, forming a ghastly gathering. The truck's engine echoed ominously, almost pleading with him to avoid them. A voice, eerily reminiscent of the first, floated through the air, rasping out his name. Mike. His heart spiked. He couldn't stop. The fear made him alive, heart racing with raw adrenaline. The truck swayed as he swerved, narrowly missing the ghoulish figures, their faces twisted in expressions of helplessness. Were they searching for help? Or were they part of some cursed puzzle, waiting for him to join their ranks? As he flew past, screams shattered the night, a collective anguish that clawed at his sanity. He glanced at them, horrified, yet captivated. They reached out, desperate fingers brushing against the cold of the truck, trying to latch on to anything that would pull them free. Each face was a reflection of loss, of every regret piled high. Just ahead, the town's outline began to materialize, a phantasmagorical image distorted around him. Buildings stood, their windows dark and manic, as if they too feared the encroaching darkness. He slammed the gas pedal harder, willing his way to safety. But as he entered the streets, his car began to stall, sputtering violently as though it were succumbing to some unseen force. Panic surged as the whispers swallowed him whole. A voice echoed louder than before. "Leave or join us." He could see the flickering lights of a diner ahead, its neon sign buzzing, open 24 hours. Could that be his refuge? A refuge from the malevolent spirits clawing at his mind. The door of the diner looked inviting, but something about the way it swayed beckoned him with a wicked smile. Before he could think, he flung open the door and stumbled inside, breathless. The dull hum of the diner masked the night outside, but the moment he stepped in, the air shifted. The patrons barely moved. Their eyes, sunken yet alert, followed him. The waitress, her face taut with an eerie calm, smiled too widely. "Welcome. We've been waiting for you, Mike." That familiar whisper hummed through his ears. Fear seeped in again. Was this a safe haven or another snare laid by the forest? He wanted to ask for help, but every word felt trapped in his throat. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The whole diner felt like a surreal painting, lifelike yet terribly distorted.
And then the front door swung open again, revealing a silhouette against the light. A figure stepped inside, and Mike froze. "Mike, there you are! We've been looking for you!" His heart plummeted. Who was it? Did it belong to the darkness outside? Or was it the last flicker of humanity he so desperately sought? The air thickened as Mike's reality wavered, teetering between salvation and a dreadful fate. Who really waited for him? The shadows beckoned once more. Which way would he turn next? The moment the door creaked open, Mike's instincts screamed for him to flee. Despite the familiar voice slicing through the din of whispers, his chest felt tight, like the walls were closing in. Panic flashed across his mind. Had he really found someone, or was this just another ghost of his torment? The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a face he recognized but hardly registered in his mind. It was Sarah, his sister, or at least the haunting echo of her. The cold dread slid down his spine as he recalled her last words, the night she disappeared into the woods. "Mike, I knew you'd come back for me," she said, her voice dripping with an unsettling sweetness. "Sarah?" he stammered, disbelief wrestling with a surge of longing. He wanted to reach out, but
the smile on her lips felt like a trap, something unnatural dancing in her eyes. "Come sit with us," she beckoned, motioning toward the other patrons. The diners, shadowy remnants of their former selves, stared at him without blinking. Their gazes held a predatory quality, as if they were waiting for something, waiting for him. As he approached the booth where she sat, he caught the scent of something decaying. A sense of urgency ignited within him. If these were echoes of the lost souls he'd seen, could he be chained to this reality forever? Desperation clawed at him. Was it too late to turn back? "Why are you here?" he croaked, scanning the diner. Unease gnawed at him, causing him to clench his fists. His heart raced, stammering under the weight of fear as the whispers grew louder, intertwining with Sarah's words. "You shouldn't have come. We could have left it all behind." "Left what?" he shouted, his voice cracking under the pressure. "What have you become?" The patrons shifted, their heads tilting in unsettling unison, eyes narrowing with an almost animalistic intensity. "You don't know?" Sarah asked, her voice rising to a chilling pitch. "We're waiting for you, brother, waiting to come home." Suddenly, the neon lights flickered, pulse-quickening as shadows danced along the walls. Mike felt the room tilt, the diner warping like a funhouse mirror. He stumbled back, grasping at the counter for support. The other diners leaned closer. Their motions became jerky, beckoning him with skeletal hands. "Join us, Mike," they called in a grotesque chorus, their voices layering over one another. The once comforting hum of the diner twisted into an ominous drone, rising and falling like a tide pulling him in. His thoughts spiraled. He could see the forest beyond the windows, and the whispers surged stronger. "Leave or join us," echoed in his mind, merging with the fabric of his reality, intertwining with his heart's frantic beats. No, he wouldn't fall for this. Gathering what little strength remained, he lunged for the door, shoving it open, expecting to meet the ringing darkness outside. But the moment he passed, the air morphed, choking and constricting like serpents curling around his throat. He stumbled forward and fell onto the pavement, gasping for breath. As he turned back to the diner, it flickered, like a mirage. The lights dimmed, and the once inviting warmth faded into a foreboding chill. The diner was no longer a refuge. It had become a prison. "Mike!" Sarah screamed, her face twisting with desperation. "You can't leave! You belong to us now!" As he scrambled to stand, the whispers surged louder, the phantoms of the diner merging into a cacophony of horror that threatened to consume him.
Frantic, he ran, his legs straining as he sprinted down the street, searching for a way out. But the shadows loomed closer, the voices taunting him, an infinite loop of despair. Behind him, the diner vanished into the night, but its echo remained, chanting his name.
Weaving into the fabric of his thoughts, the sinister call rang through the silence. You cannot escape. Mike's heart raced as he realized he could still feel the shadows stretching toward him, hungry for his light. He couldn't turn back now. Where could he go? Somewhere in the darkness ahead, the outlines of more figures began to emerge. Another choice to make. What awaited him next? Would he face the primal fear lurking in the shadows? Or would he surrender to the wavering whispers that beckoned him deeper into the abyss? Each step Mike took down the forsaken road felt heavier than the last. The weight of despair pressed down, the shadows slithering along the ground like hungry serpents. Silence enveloped him, thick and suffocating, broken only by the irregular thud of his heart racing in his chest. Ahead, the dim glimmer of light broke through the curtain of darkness. A flickering sign read, "Open 24 hours." If this diner had been tainted with an echo of his past, could its counterpart provide sanctuary from whatever hunted him now? He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder, every instinct screaming that those haunting whispers were lurking just out of view. The light beckoned with false warmth. He pushed the door open. The hinges creaked, resounding in the silence. Inside, the atmosphere was different, yet eerily familiar. The patrons sat at the counter, heads down, engrossed in their food, oblivious to him. Or worse, waiting. Thick, greasy air weighed down the space, and his stomach churned at the smell of burnt coffee and stale fries. A waitress appeared, her face shadowed by a frayed cap. "What'll it be?" Her voice was cool, almost mechanical. "Just coffee," Mike managed, voice hoarse. He slid into a booth in the corner, feeling the sticky vinyl cling to his skin as he sank down. He tried to calm the whirlwind of thoughts, but they only spiraled tighter. What was it about these places that seemed to warp reality? The waitress returned, pouring coffee from a chipped pot. "You seem out of sorts," she said, her gaze piercing, as if she could see the monsters in his mind. Just a strange night," he stammered, avoiding her eyes. "Strange happens more than you'd think," she replied, a thin smile creeping across her face. It felt predatory, the way her gaze flicked toward the other patrons. They didn't move, heads still bowed. Suddenly, a clatter broke the uneasy quiet. A man at the counter had knocked over his drink, ice cascading across the floor. He froze, his eyes locked on Mike, but they weren't filled with fear. They were wild, pleading. "Got to go," he shouted, knocking over another chair as he bolted for the door. Before Mike could register what was happening, the man was gone, swallowed by the night outside. The door swung shut, leaving an echoing emptiness behind. "No one leaves here," the waitress said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "People come in, but they don't go out." Not after midnight. Mike's heart raced again, adrenaline pumping through his veins. It clicked, a dawning realization that each diner was connected by something sinister, like a web waiting for him to get tangled. Could he truly escape this hell? The patrons finally lifted their heads, grinning wide but hollow. "What's the matter, Mike?" they crooned in unison, their voices a sickening symphony. "Don't you want to join us?" He jerked back, feeling the familiar tightening grip on his throat. Racing thoughts collided in his mind. Was he trapped in a loop of nightmares that fed off him? Was he just another vessel for the shadows to consume? "Leave!" he shouted, leaping from his seat, preparing to run for the door. Panic surged, a primal instinct to flee. But it wasn't just fear that consumed him. There was a daring urge to find the truth behind the shadowy figures that haunted him. The patrons stood up, forming a wall at the entrance, their twisted smiles gleaming in the dim light. He could feel the darkness crawling around, infiltrating his very being. "You haven't even unlocked the door yet, Mike," the waitress whispered, taking a step closer, her breath chilling him. "It's not just any door. It's your door." In that moment, something in Mike twisted, fueling a resolve he didn't know he had. He had to confront this. Whatever darkness awaited him, he needed to plow through it. Turning to the booth behind him, he spotted a flickering sign. The keys. They sat on a faded napkin, glinting like golden promises. "What if I use your own darkness against you?" he muttered, steeling his resolve. He lunged for the napkin, but as his fingers brushed the keys, the lights dimmed even lower. A sinister laughter echoed through the diner, menacing and deliciously maddening. Too late for that, Mike. What awaited him if he took those keys? Was it freedom, or a trap even worse? The decision churned in his gut. Where would the keys lead him next? Would they unlock the truth behind the diner's curse, or seal his fate in shadows forever? The moment Mike grabbed the keys, the atmosphere shifted. A pulse of energy crackled through the air, cold and electric, and in that instant, everything that had felt familiar twisted into something grotesque. The laughter echoed again, but this time it carried a note of triumph, reverberating through the diner like twisted metal scraping against glass. "What's so funny?" he snapped, clutching the keys tightly, the metal biting into his palm. The waitress merely smiled, her lips parting to reveal teeth too sharp, too white. The patrons around him leaned closer, their faces shadows flickering in the dying light, eyes gleaming with an unnatural hunger. "Because you think those keys will save you," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "But hope is merely a door closed tight." He glanced around, taking in the dimness, the shadowy figures surrounding him. Their faces blurred into an indistinct mass of mockery and dread. Panic clawed at his throat, and the door was not obedience but an offer to join this wretched congregation. "Leave him alone!" a raspy voice cried from the corner, a figure trembling in a booth. Mike turned to see a woman, her eyes wide with terror, hands shaking at her sides. "They'll take you too! You have to figure out the truth!" "Truth," the waitress jeered, her laughter shattering the silence. "The truth is nothing but a delusion. You all arrive thinking you'll escape, but the more you struggle, the tighter the web becomes." The woman in the booth continued, her words rushed, desperate. "The keys can't open your way out, Mike. They are part of the curse, part of what chains this diner to the darkness of those who left and never returned." Taking a step back, he felt the weight of the shadows pressing against him, a suffocating embrace that sought to draw him in. How could he fight against something older than him, something that thrived on fear? But there was a flicker, a glimmer of defiance sparked inside him like a tiny flame. "Show me what you hide," he yelled, holding the keys aloft. The patrons recoiled, and the waitress's face twisted into an expression of pure rage. "You dare challenge the darkness?" she hissed, and in that moment the air grew thick with malice. The diner shuddered as a deep rumble rose from beneath the floor. Without thinking, Mike plunged the key into the nearest slot, a trembling hope surging through him. The lock clicked, and he flung the door open wide. Darkness surged. From beyond the threshold, tendrils of shadows surged forth, wrapping around his arms, trying to pull him back. Faces flashed in the void, lost, tortured souls reaching for him, yearning to be freed or dragged into the abyss. "No!" he screamed, forcing himself to step inside the encroaching black. "I won't be another prisoner here." He stumbled into the void, forcing his will against the tide. He felt those who had come before him trying to latch on to his fear, whispering secrets long buried. But the keys rattled in his grip, holding the promise of his truth, of his escape, if only he could withstand the deafening whispers. The walls of the diner started to tremble, shadows slipping from the cracks like oil. The air grew thick, and he could hear the patrons behind him gasping in surprise. Some were now backing away, fear spreading among them. "Mike!" the waitress cried, her voice frantic. "You can't!" He plunged forward, ready to defy the shadows, ready to break whatever curse connected him to this dread. And just as he thought he could escape the gnawing darkness, a blood-curdling scream filled the air, fracturing the very fabric of reality around him. Would he find freedom, or be consumed by the very shadows he sought to confront? The key slipped from his fingers, plummeting into the depths of the void. The diner shook with a vengeance, and darkness erupted with a deafening roar. What lay beyond those shadows? A river of despair, or perhaps a path to salvation? Time stood still as he held his breath, waiting to discover what awaited him in the depths of his own darkest fears. The void sucked him in, wrapping him in its suffocating embrace like a heavy shroud. The air turned cold, and Mike's heart raced. He pushed forward, straining against the shadows as they clawed at his arms, dragging him down, down. "Fight!" the woman's voice echoed somewhere behind him, faint yet fierce. He strained his ears, focusing through the chaos. But the whispers grew louder, twisting into nagging doubts, haunting memories he thought he'd buried. "You'll never escape," they sneered, as if the dread itself had eyes, watching him with cruel delight. With a fleeting burst of strength, Mike kicked through the clinging darkness, his breath quickening. An unseen force fought back, but he pressed deeper into the black, his determination ignited. His fingers gripped the keys tight enough to turn his knuckles white. "Where are you?" he gasped, still moving forward. And just like that, the endless void shifted. Suddenly, he found himself standing in a dimly lit room, the walls covered in damp, peeling wallpaper. The muffled laughter from before faded, replaced with a sinister murmur that tingled down his spine. Before him loomed a door, a single heavy door at the far end that seemed to breathe as if it had a life of its own. A cold draft swept through, enticing him closer, but the air was thick with dread. He could feel the key's energy pulsing in his palm, resonating with a rhythm that matched his racing heart. "Do you have the courage?" the voice of the waitress whispered from somewhere above him, echoing in the room but absent from sight. "Courage," he muttered, feeling foolish. But in this place of shadows, that glimmer of hope felt like a weapon. Mike staggered towards the door, inching closer with each hesitant step. He stopped momentarily, glancing back, his pulse thrumming in his ears. The darkness churned behind him, faces looming, desperate with fear and longing, mouths opening in silent screams. "Don't think about them. They want to drag you back," he murmured, fighting the weight of dread. He focused on the door ahead, the knob glistening like a beacon. Taking a deep breath, he slid the key into the lock. A sudden silence engulfed the room, holding its breath with him. Mike could almost feel the eyes of the shadows boring into him, anticipation hanging in the air like a thick fog. "Come on," he whispered, urging the key to turn. The moment it clicked, the door shuddered violently, as if alive, and Mike instinctively jumped back, heart pounding. Heavy shadows burst through the gaps, swirling around him like vipers, hissing promises of despair.
His breath caught. What do I do? What do
I do? Panic seized him, clawing at his insides. The door swung open with a creak that echoed through the silence. Beyond the threshold lay a path lined with flickering lanterns, illuminating ghostly figures that slipped in and out of reality. Screams of disbelief swirled around him. He could feel their desperation, their tragic stories merging with his own as he stood caught between choices. This wasn't a way out. It was a choice to face what awaited him, or give in to the shadows. Each heartbeat pounded a deafening chime in his ears. He stepped cautiously over the threshold, but the lantern light dimmed, and the shadows lunged at him from behind, as if trying to pull him back into the void. "Join us!" a multitude of voices cried out, eager and pleading. "No!" Mike shouted, feeling the strength of his defiance rising. He could see their hopes and regrets woven together like a tapestry of despair. He realized then that here, within this intersection of realities, he held the power. The keys weren't just to open doors, they were to confront the shadows of those who had lost their way. But would he have the strength to bear that burden? In that critical moment of choice, the voices around him became a cacophony, and the very ground trembled beneath him, shifting, pulling him in two directions at once. What awaited him on the other side of the truth? Would it heal him, or would the shadows break him? The lanterns flickered as darkness loomed, grasping for him with icy tendrils. Was this his moment of redemption, or was it merely the beginning of something far worse? The moment he stepped through the threshold, the lanterns flared brighter, casting eerie patterns across the landscape. The shadows writhed, but he stood firm, fists clenched around the key. Everything shifted with a jolt, like he was on the edge of a precipice. The air smelled of damp earth and something rotten. "Help us!" a voice wailed. Mike whirled, facing a translucent figure, a woman with hollow eyes and a face twisted in anguish. She reached towards him, fingers stretching in desperate pleas. It sent a chill down his spine. "You can't let them win. They'll consume us all." "No!" he shouted, refusing to let her drag him down. Yet fear wormed its way back in, gnawing at his resolve. Was he any different from those lost souls? Each lantern flickered higher, and he glimpsed more figures, tearing at the fabric of reality. Men, women, children, all trapped in a loop of grief. He stepped further into the lantern-lit path, each flicker illuminating snippets of their lives. A birthday party, laughter echoing, then shadows creeping in from the edges. A car crash, the screeching of tires, and suddenly the laughter silenced. "Do you see their pain?" the woman's voice cracked. "You have to choose." "What am I supposed to do?" Mike gasped, understanding dawning as dread enveloped him. He wasn't just a visitor. He was part of this nightmare. Each story clawed through him, and he could feel their desperation crawling under his skin. The truth hit him hard like a punch. He must face his own shadows. Before he could second-guess himself, Mike turned towards the nearest lantern. He reached out, trembling fingers brushing the glass. Suddenly, a distorted image of his own memory unfolded. His hands stained with blood, the panic in his chest as he stood over a body. "What have I done?" he whispered. The wall of despair surged around him as he staggered back, almost colliding with the whispers. "Accept it. You belong here," they hissed, each accusation thick with malice. "No," he yelled, heart racing. "I won't." Rage surged through him, igniting a spark of defiance. He whipped around to face the dark figures. "Show yourselves. I am not afraid." With the sound of cracking glass, the spirits around him shimmered like the surface of a disturbed pond. They halted, and for a brief moment, Mike felt their collective breath.
a pause between sorrow and longing. Was it fear, or were they simply waiting for the answer he desperately searched for? "Your burden, your choice," said a booming voice from the shadows, echoing, reverberating in the darkness. "Face the truth within, or be lost as we are." Panic bubbled in his throat as the ground beneath him trembled, twisting reality into nightmarish visages. Glimpses of his past thrummed around him, tormenting him. Friends betrayed, lives ruined. His breath quickened, adrenaline surging. A single lantern flickered before him, brighter than the rest, illuminating a path diverging from the memories. Its warm glow felt like a heartbeat, welcoming yet foreboding. "Embrace it," the shadows urged, their voices now a menacing chorus weaving through the air. "Let go of the past. Let it consume you." "No," Mike shouted again, stepping towards the bright light, the essence of hope and horror intertwining. Would he have the courage to confront his sins? Did he even deserve to escape? With a shuddering breath, he raised the key to the lantern, knowing the truth was right before him. The weight of all those lost souls pressed down, but something flickered within, a revelation, a shred of hope. As he turned the key, the lantern crackled with energy, enveloping him in blinding light. Everything around him faded in a rush of shadows and echoes, leaving him untethered, alone, yet filled with the urgency of unknown choices. What happened next awaited him beyond the light. Would he find salvation, or plunge deeper into the abyss? The light flickered one last time, and then went dark. Mike awoke with a start, his body slamming against the leather seat of his truck. Breathless, heart racing, panic coursing through him like electric shockwaves. His knuckles whitened around the steering wheel, and his surroundings came into focus. He was on the highway again, the engine rumbling steadily beneath him, illuminated by the pale glow of moonlight streaming through the windshield. No more whispering shadows. No. More haunting echoes. Just endless blacktops stretching into the horizon. But what was that lingering sensation? Unease threaded through his mind. He was alive, but did that mean he had escaped? Memories of the diner, its twisted demands, the chilling promises of the lost souls, filled his thoughts, a shadow creeping at the edges of his consciousness. He needed to know. Had he truly broken the cycle? He glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the darkness still lurking, waiting to claim him. Nothing. Just the quiet reassurance of the asphalt behind him. His heart began to settle, the panic ebbing away, replaced by a simmering sense of determination. He remembered the sweetness of hope wrapped in the painful truths he had faced, how they clashed like stormy winds. It was there, the flicker of light that had guided him through monumental darkness. He had to keep moving. Onward he drove, letting the rhythmic hum of the road ease the disquiet in his heart. With every passing mile, he felt freer, the weight of his past gradually lifting. Each ghostly face he'd seen, every whisper that had clawed at him, felt like a distant memory fading into the night. The sun began to rise, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, and he realized how bright the world could be after the darkest nights. The horizon widened, and Mike felt an overwhelming urge to live, to reach out to those he'd lost, to cherish every moment left, filled with both joy and sorrow. But as the sun cast its light upon the road, he felt a twinge of guilt wash over him. Those who hadn't freed themselves from the shadows lingered still. A heavy heart weighed on him, the realization that while he had escaped, many still walked the line between worlds, waiting for rescue or redemption. He picked up his phone, fingers trembling over the screen. Drawing a deep breath, he made a call. "Sarah," he whispered to himself, "I'll find you." The line rang, the vibration sending ripples of hope through him. Then she answered, her voice cautious yet vibrant, breaking the silence like the first light breaking through the dawn. "Mike? Yeah, it's me," he replied, throat tight with emotion. "I'm coming to get you. We're going to fix this." As the morning sun climbed higher, illuminating everything in pure warmth, Mike felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. He wasn't just running from the shadows anymore. He was racing toward the light, a path carved out with courage, each heartbeat a promise to those lost and forgotten. The road stretched ahead, full of twists and turns, but for the first time in a long time, Mike felt he wasn't just moving forward, he was moving towards something beautiful and healing. And as he drove, he knew this journey was just the beginning. It was time to help others reclaim their lives from the darkness. He could be the lighthouse in the shadows, guiding lost souls home. So, if you're feeling this,
if you can feel the urge to escape the darkness in your life or want to uncover secrets of the unknown, here's the moment to act. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss more exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about Mike's future. Where should he go next? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters, and together we can navigate the depths of the unknown.